Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Alright, without further ado, let us dive straight into the recap of Tsukimichi, Moonlit Fantasy Part 31. The story begins late at night after Makoto has returned from the Labyrinth. At around 2 in the morning, he suddenly wakes up from his sleep. It is not because Mio's sleeping face is too close to him, nor because Tomoe's leg is resting on his thigh, but because he senses that something is not right. Through Sakai detection, Makoto realizes that several presences among his subordinates have disappeared. Baron, Hokuto, and Shi are apparently inside the labyrinth at an unusual hour. Not only that, Iroha's 2 guards, Akashi and Yuduki, are also missing from the inn. Feeling that something is off, Makoto decides to head outside to follow up. However, his steps come to a halt when he instead sees Akashi and Yuduki walking along the empty streets. The 2 of them seem to be heading toward the Blue Jewel Zone, an elite district where high-ranking officials live. Their movements feel strange and unlike their usual behavior, immediately putting Makoto on alert. Instead of chasing after Baron into the labyrinth, he chooses to tail the 2 women. Along the way, Makoto even takes down several thugs who try to rob him, all without any real difficulty. Akashi and Yuduki's trail eventually stops in front of a bar that appears to be closed, yet it gives off an unmistakably suspicious atmosphere. From behind the door, a very strong fragrance can be detected, the kind of scent that instantly sets off danger alarms in Makoto's mind. Annoyed because his bad premonitions almost never miss, he casts aside his hesitation and pushes the door open. Inside, Makoto sees Akashi holding a bottle. Without wasting any time, he immediately uses magic to knock the bottle out of her hand, causing it to shatter into pieces. Right after that, Makoto activates wind magic to disperse the pungent aroma that fills the room. He quickly realizes that the bottle contains a drug originating from Tomoki. Akashi and Yuduki are clearly shocked by Makoto's sudden appearance. Makoto actually wants to talk, but he judges that the place is not safe for an important conversation. Because of that, he suggests moving to the labyrinth so they can talk calmly. Yuduki is briefly startled by the proposal, but after understanding Makoto's intention, she nods in agreement. She then promptly pulls along Akashi, who still looks dazed, to go with them. After leaving some money on the table, the 3 of them leave the bar. In his heart, Makoto does not expect that Tomoki has developed his charm technique into the form of a drug. What is even more insane is that the drug is made to resemble perfume with an extremely strong scent, enough to influence anyone who inhales it. Sometime later, on the 4th floor of the labyrinth, Makoto finally asks what Akashi and Yuduki are actually investigating. Yuduki explains that they are investigating someone who is suspected of targeting Iroha's life. That person is named Tatsuki Kogetsu, a minister from the Osakabi family and the younger brother of Sogetsu. Furthermore, Yuduki also reveals that Kogetsu has set his sights on Kuzunoha. After that, Makoto shifts the topic to ask about the origin of the perfume bottle that Akashi was holding earlier. Akashi admits that her memory feels vague, and she does not truly remember where the bottle came from. This confession shocks Yuduki. According to her, Akashi should know the origin of the bottle, especially since Akashi previously talked about having a connection to a safe place for Iroha, and even intended to bring Yuduki there. However, Akashi denies this and says that she never said such a thing. In short, Makoto concludes that Akashi has been under the influence of some kind of hypnosis. She only regains her senses after Makoto calls out to her and destroys the perfume bottle. Because Akashi no longer remembers the earlier events clearly, Yuduki continues the explanation. The connection Akashi mentioned turns out to be Iroha's own mother, a woman named Haruka. Gradually, Akashi's memories begin to return. She remembers that she once met Haruka at the Kisimo Shrine and was then taken to a room filled with a fragrant aroma. Hearing this account, Makoto's sense of foreboding grows even worse. Akashi also reveals that it was Haruka who asked her to hand that small bottle over to Iroha. After hearing all of this, Makoto realizes that the situation is already far too late. Iroha's mother has already been exposed to Tomoki's charm, and that condition is clearly not something that can be taken lightly. Makoto then explains that the perfume he destroyed earlier is actually a manifestation of Tomoki's charm power. Anyone who inhales its scent will immediately become ensnared and turned into the hero's servant. Upon hearing this explanation, Akashi and Yuduki are immediately shocked, especially because they never expected a hero to be involved to such an extent. Akashi then adds that in Haruka's fragrance-filled room earlier, there were several other people present, and one of them was Kogetsu. At this point, Makoto truly feels that his head is filled with problems. Inside the labyrinth, there is a girl who openly despises him, while on the surface, Tomoki's influence is spreading like a plague, slowly destroying the Osakabi family from within. Makoto looks extremely irritated because once again, Tomoki has become the source of the chaos surrounding him. On the other hand, Akashi's face grows increasingly pale. She is known to be deeply loyal to Iroha, yet she almost unknowingly ended up siding with and serving someone else. In short, after the discussion comes to an end, they all agree to return to the hotel. However, just before they leave, a strange sensation suddenly spreads through Makoto. A foreign memory enters his mind, transforming into an archive of knowledge about the background of the 3 girls he once killed, who turn out to be noble daughters from the Empire. Strangely, that archive of knowledge feels as if it is neatly stored inside a drawer in Makoto's room. He then suspects that Tomoe's power is unintentionally flowing into him. He can even feel the intense anger and hatred directed at him from someone named Pion. Makoto's thoughts are abruptly interrupted when 3 familiar figures emerge from the direction of the portal. Baron, Hokuto, and Shi appear to be in a hurry and are quite surprised to find Makoto there. Baron even reacts in panic, feeling as though he has been caught red-handed. When Makoto asks what they are actually doing in the labyrinth so late at night, the answers he receives overlap with one another. Shi loudly complains that she was kidnapped and tied up by Hokuto because she refused to train with him. Meanwhile, Baron and Hokuto explain in a humble tone that they were making preparations. Exploring the lower floors has begun to feel increasingly difficult, so they decided to increase their training hours in order to avoid becoming a burden to Makoto the next day. Hearing this, Makoto states that he does indeed intend to take them to deeper floors and is actually looking forward to the results of their extra training. After that, they all leave the labyrinth together. Upon arriving at the hotel, Makoto is once again taken by surprise. Even though it is already very early in the morning, the staff welcome him warmly. The restaurant service is apparently operating at full capacity without interruption, a level of service that leaves Makoto deeply impressed by the establishment's standards. Meanwhile, far beneath Temple Avenue, inside Kishimo Shrine, which has now become the secret headquarters of the followers of the hero Tomoki, Haruka, Iroha's mother, receives news about Akashi's failure to carry out the mission she was given. This means that Haruka has still not succeeded in bringing Iroha over to her side. Haruka herself is already completely under the influence of Tomoki's charm and has become one of his devoted followers. She even harbors the ambition to drag Iroha into becoming a follower of Tomoki as well. In the middle of that discussion, Kogetsu appears. Tension briefly rises when Kogetsu makes a sarcastic remark about Haruka's attitude, judging her to be too deeply immersed in her worship. Haruka even briefly displays a sharp, murderous intent when she believes that Kogetsu is questioning her love for Tomoki. However, Kogetsu quickly calms the situation, reminding her that they are allies who are both cooperating with the hero for their own respective interests. From there, their vile plan is revealed. Kogetsu has almost completely seized control of the authority within the Osakabi family, while Haruka is slowly poisoning her husband, Iroha's father, with a low-dose poison that goes undetected, ensuring that his eventual death will appear natural. Haruka even plans to install one of her brainwashed daughters as the next head of the family so that she can be easily controlled. Kogetsu feels some anxiety about the existence of the Kuzunoha company, which has ties to Seiritz. However, Haruka dismisses the threat, believing that Iroha's position is already too cornered to be saved. Although he appears calm on the surface, Kogetsu is actually horrified by how Haruka, who once had a strong spirit, has now been completely broken and turned into Tomoki's puppet. Even so, he realizes that he has gone too far. For Kogetsu, there is no longer any path of return. Beneath the still dark morning sky, he walks away with the resolve to eliminate anyone who stands in the way of his plan, including the Kuzunoha company. After a long and exhausting night in Kanaoi, Makoto ends up in a place he never expected. This time, he is already in Kaleneon. Amid a vast expanse of white snow stretching as far as the eye can see, Makoto stands facing Shiki, who keeps his head lowered, filled with overwhelming guilt. Their meeting was originally supposed to take place later that afternoon in Rotsgard for preparations related to classes at the academy. However, an emergency call that arrives while Makoto is still asleep forces him to relocate instantly to Kaleneon. The report he receives is no trivial matter. Shiki has apparently been giving special training to several of Makoto's students, and in the middle of that training, Jyn suffers a serious incident, even coming close to losing his life. The training is originally intended to help Jyn become accustomed to fighting in snowy regions with extreme temperatures. However, there is one factor that Shiki does not anticipate at all. Jyn ends up chasing something too far away from the training area, eventually becoming isolated and surrounded by monsters. Shiki feels completely responsible for what happened and is consumed by fear over the worst possible outcome that could have befallen Jyn. Not long after that, Makoto hears a voice that sounds familiar to his ears. The figure introduces herself as Sofia. She explains that her visit is on her father's orders to meet Makoto. The name of the father she mentions is false, or more precisely, Root, the name he uses while serving as the chairman of the Adventurers Guild. Upon hearing this, Makoto is immediately shocked. It is not only because Sofia is still alive, but also because of the fact that Sofia calls Root her father. Even more shocking, the Sofia standing before Makoto right now is not the adult figure he once knew. Her appearance instead resembles that of a young teenage girl. From this, it becomes clear that Sofia has a direct connection to Jyn. During the earlier training session, Jyn catches sight of Sofia and immediately runs toward her without hesitation. Jyn calls out to her by the name Sister Miranda. That very chase is what leads Jyn too far away and ultimately results in him being surrounded by monsters. Meanwhile, Makoto and Sofia have a further conversation. Makoto honestly assesses that Jin's strength is still relatively weak. This evaluation surprises Sofia because from an outsider's perspective, Jyn can already be considered quite strong. However, for the Kuzunoha company, the standard for strength exists at an entirely different level. This makes Sofia even more convinced that Makoto and his group truly possess power that matches the stories she has long heard from her father. She also reveals that she has genuinely wanted to meet Makoto in person. Strangely enough, seeing Sofia's innocent and pure cheerfulness causes a sharp pain in Makoto's heart. Sofia is now living without the burden of hatred, looking happy and carefree. Yet to Makoto, that sight feels deeply sorrowful. He feels as though Sofia is being guided and manipulated in the palm of Root's hand without even realizing it. During the conversation, Sofia also explains that a man named Asnoval is the one who kills the monsters surrounding Jyn. Furthermore, Sofia mentions that Asnoval's next destination is Tsuge. Upon hearing the name Asnoval, Makoto immediately becomes alert. As one of the Origin adventurers, Asnoval's movements are clearly not something that can be ignored so easily. Makoto begins to consider the possible purpose behind Asnoval's journey to Tsuge. Not long after that, Sofia politely takes her leave. Before departing, she asks Makoto to stop using formal language when speaking with her in their next meeting. After the girl disappears from sight, Makoto immediately prepares to meet Jyn. Makoto approaches Jyn, who is now lying down with his body wrapped in bandages, almost like a mummy. Without beating around the bush, Makoto directly asks how his condition ends up becoming so severe and demands a detailed explanation. During the conversation, Makoto begins to mention the name Sofia. However, Jyn immediately insists that to him, that person is not Sofia. To Jyn, that figure is his first teacher, his closest companion, and the first person he truly respects. Jyn knows her by the name Miranda. He even reveals that Miranda is his first love. Because of that, Jyn feels deeply confused. Miranda should already be an adult, yet when they meet again, she appears far younger. Jyn has no knowledge at all that the adult version of Sofia has already been defeated by Makoto, nor that the person he meets now is merely Sofia in her teenage form. Makoto, Shiki, and Jyn continue their discussion. The core of the conversation is a stern warning from Makoto and Shiki, urging Jyn to never act recklessly again. They emphasize that Jyn must not make careless decisions, especially ones that risk his life like what has just happened. Their tone is deliberately firm, almost like a threat, so that Jyn truly understands the danger of his actions. Jyn himself remains silent, while being harshly reprimanded, and in the end, he apologizes for everything that has occurred. For now, Makoto makes one important point very clear to Jyn. The girl he met on the snowy mountain is now named Sofia, and after that incident, Sofia does not have any good impression of Jyn at all. Seeing Jin's mental state beginning to waver, Shiki tries to calm the situation by saying that they will look into Sofia more deeply at a later time. Even so, Shiki still firmly insists that Jyn must be sent back to the academy in order to maintain peace in Kaleneon. In the end, Jyn cannot do anything except comply. He allows himself to remain wrapped in bandages like a mummy as Makoto and Shiki leave the room. One matter may be settled, but for Makoto, the list of problems he has to deal with is still long. After parting ways with Shiki, Makoto steps through the mist gate toward Tsige. There are many things he wants to confirm there, including meeting Root to find out the reason behind Sofia's appearance in a teenage form. Upon arriving in Tsige, Makoto's steps lead him to the Adventurers Guild. Along the way, Makoto runs into Rembrandt. In their brief conversation, Rembrandt explains that the conflict to achieve Tsige City's independence is still ongoing. The war is not over yet, and he himself is still making various efforts to fight for the city's independence. Makoto also asks about someone named Asnoval. However, Rembrandt only knows that Asnoval is the name of a legendary knight from the nation of Laurel, and rumors about that figure circulate only within Laurel's territory. After the conversation ends, they part ways. Not long after that, Makoto finds Root in the middle of a conversation with Toa. At the moment, Root is using the name Vegan. Their discussion turns out to touch on the topic of lovers, and Makoto immediately realizes that he is the subject being talked about. This makes Makoto irritated. He firmly states that he is still normal and still likes women, so Root does not need to make up stories as if they have that kind of relationship. Makoto is also left confused once again by Root's habit of having so many names and constantly changing them. Without wasting any time, Makoto invites Root to come along to the Kuzunoha company because there are many important things he wants to ask him directly. On the other hand, Toa feels somewhat uncomfortable staying there and intends to leave. However, before that, Makoto briefly stops her and asks about Asnoval. Toa explains that she knows Asnoval as an origin adventurer, as well as a legendary knight of Laurel. Among the many heroic tales of the origin adventurers, the story of Asnoval is her favorite. After sharing this short exchange, Makoto asks Toa to pass a message to him if she ever learns any other information related to Asnoval. So, that is the recap of Part 31 from Tsukimichi, Moonlit Fantasy.